to Tech Tips by Norfield. I'm Carl Lewis, Senior Service Technician here at Norfield. In this video, we're going to be looking at an older Rev Series Magnum, and we're going to be changing the cutter head blades. Now the cutter heads on the older Magnums and the newer Magnums are virtually the same, so the same procedures will work for the older one and the newer one. However, there are some early cutter heads that do not have user replaceable blades. If you suspect that you have one of those, you can call Norfield's service department and we'll help you determine which cutter head you do have. So obviously the first thing we need to do is take the guard off. There are two bolts down below that are in slotted holes, usually a 9/16 end wrench, 5/16 Allen. Take the top bolt out. We can lift the guard off and set it aside. Remove the clip from the pin and the pin. We can swing the power feed wheel out of the way. In a lot of cases there will be an aluminum cover over the end of the vacuum shroud that you'll need to take off. This one no longer has one. And then we're going to hold the shaft with one wrench and turn the nut. The nut is a left-handed thread, so we're going to be turning it clockwise to loosen. Use a 1/2-inch end wrench to hold the shaft, for flats out here, and then a large crescent wrench to loosen the nut. Take the nut off. Then remove the cutter head. Behind the cutter head there is a spacer which needs to be on the machine. Sometimes that comes off with the cutter head. Make sure that you save it and reinstall it on the spindle. So the first thing that is important is safety. The cutter head cuts the door in the middle of the cutter, not at the edges. So even though it's very dull out in the middle, the corners and the edges are very sharp. So be careful how you handle it, touching it only in the valleys or the flat spots and not on the blades. Also, if you were to hold it in your hand to remove the blades, when the bolt pops loose, it's a good possibility you'll be cut by the blade. So the correct and the safe way to do that is to put that on the table. You locate the NS marking, put the NS down against the table, put the wrench in the set screw, palm of your hand on the cutter, palm of your hand on the blade, and loosen the bolt. Once I got it popped loose, you back it off about 2 or 3 threads. Then you can remove the old blade and the gib. This is called the gib. This is the old blade. We just need to do that 2 more times. Okay. The blades that are used in this cutter head are reversible. They've been sharpened on both sides. The first time you take the blades out and to sharpen, you can just turn them over, put them back in, and use the other side that hasn't been used yet. This one is, obviously you can see the line on it from the side that has been used, and it looks like this side has not been used. So an easy way to test to see if the side of the blade is sharp or not is to take the edge of the blade and set it on your thumbnail and try and drag it back and forth. If it moves easily, it's dull. If the blade, however, catches and doesn't slide easily, then that side of the blade is still sharp. If both sides of the blades are dull, then it will be necessary to replace them with new blades, which are available obviously from Norfield. If you're going to reuse the blade, all of the wood pitch that is built up on the dull side needs to be cleaned off. There can't be any of this buildup on the blade, the side that we're going to turn and put down into the cutter head. Also, the cutter head needs to be cleaned up. As you can see, there's plenty of sawdust and other things down in here. All of that needs to be cleaned out as well. All right, so we've cleaned up the cutter head itself and the gibs on both sides, the side that will contact the blade and the opposite side. The next thing is getting the blades in correctly. If you look very carefully at the cutter head, you'll find a little beveled seat back here, and the beveled edge of the blade wants to set right on that beveled seat. When that happens, then the cutter head is the correct height so that it'll make a nice clean and smooth cut. If they're not seated correctly, if they're too high or too low, then the cutter head will make a choppy cut and you'll have other issues on the machine like bumps and snipes and things like that. So it's got to be down against the beveled seat. So there is a way to ensure that that is down against the beveled seat, and that's what we'll show you now. So the two little pins sticking out there, we're going to put the new blade on there with the beveled sides away from the pins and set that down into the cutter head. I'm going to take these two set screws and I'm only going to bring them up until they're finger tight. Just touching. So now, the trick is to take this cutter head, place it on a non-metallic surface, plastic or wood, balance the cutter head so that it's only touching on the tip of the blade, hold it upright. You don't really need to push down on it, the cutter head weighs enough. We're going to loosen the two set screws about 1/4 of a turn and then tighten them back up again. That will ensure that the cutter head blade is actually seated all the way down against the beveled seat. So then we'll set it on the table again, this time with the NS facing up. Put the wrench in the set screw and do the reverse of the loosening. We've replaced the 3 blades and we're ready to reinstall the cutter head. When we reinstall the cutter head, we'll look for the NS stamped on the side of the cutter head. That side goes out. Put it on, you should still be able to see the NS on the cutter head. Install the left-handed nut. Tighten the nut. Next you would install the cover if you had one. Swing the power feed wheel into place. Place the pin and the clip. And then reinstall the power feed cover.